It's another happy day aboard Little Bear, and I've got teeny little jobs that I've done and I'm going to do. I bought some hardware to finish off the hasp task, and I bought some other stuff which I'll perhaps show you later. First I'll show you what I did for the hasps. Simple enough. I put D-ring through the hasps. Those won't come undone anytime soon, and they'll hold the hatch in place. The basically finished deck box, and I did the same thing for the hasp on this. Got a big old D-ring put in there, stop it from flopping open in the seaway. We're all good. So after about 5 seconds of thought and deliberation, I decided that rather than put perfection straight onto the wood that I've sanded on the Boomkin, I am going to paint it first with the same product that I originally painted with, which was penetrating epoxy. The product that I'm using is by S1 System 3 clear penetrating epoxy, and although it didn't stand up to the rigors of UV, it certainly did a good job. The reason why I want to do that is because penetrating epoxy will fill the grain of the wood, and if I put on 2 or 3 coats today, then when I come back and sand it with a finer grain sandpaper, the imperfections and little bits that stick up from the wood will be easy to sand off and create a nice smooth surface for the perfection. And I'll put perfection over top of epoxy, and hopefully it does what I intend for it to do, which is look good and protect the wood. The penetrating epoxy is a little bit different than the epoxy that I use for fiberglassing. This stuff you mix equal parts, 1 to 1, and then once it's been measured out and stirred up thoroughly, you let it sit for at least 15 minutes according to the instructions. Repaint time is minimum of 12 hours. So once I paint these with epoxy, the Boomkin, then I have to wait a minimum of 12 hours before I paint it again. And the trick is, if it goes to 24 hours, then it has to be sanded, and I don't want to sand it. So I will have to be back here tomorrow, relatively early, to paint it again. But that's okay. So I have mixed the stuff up. It's got a nice kind of amber ale beer look to it, but I wouldn't recommend drinking that. And I will wait for my 15 minutes, and then I'll grab my brush and start painting it. While I'm waiting for the epoxy to set off, the 15-minute window that they tell you to wait for in the instructions, I am going to take care of a little bit of housekeeping. And that is my paint. I have a gallon can of primer and a gallon can of Bright Sides topside paint on board the boat. I've had it for probably a couple of years now, and the issue I have with it is that as I've used it, paint has gotten into the groove where the lids go, and it won't seal properly. So every time I open up, I've got a layer of hardened paint to deal with, and I just think that's kind of a waste. That stuff is expensive, so I went out and bought a couple of buckets into which to put my paint and a couple of lids with which to close the paint. So that's fairly simple. Just pour paint out of the old tins into the buckets, put the lids on, and Bob's your uncle. Can you see the difference? I can see the difference. Can you see the difference? Well, it looks pretty good to me. I mean, the finish and color. And of course, it hasn't cured up, and I'm not finished painting the wood, but that's basically what it's going to look like. It brings out the grain nice and clear, and when I put the perfection over top of that, it's going to look gorgeous. I just wished I had done this when the wood was new, before it got blackened by the weather, but that is what it is, so we'll just carry on. Okay, so we're going to let that kick off overnight, and we'll be back hopefully bright and early tomorrow. This weather should be holding like it is right now, sunny, a little bit of cloud, so there shouldn't be any moisture to bugger up my plants, but I'm happy with the result here, and we will continue tomorrow. One of the new goodies I got was a sink strainer for the stainless steel sink in the galley. The one I took out was plastic, and when I went to take it out, it broke. So I bought a steel one from Home Depot, and I have installed it and I'm currently testing it for leaks. So far, so good. How about the sink, the new strainer, and underneath, it's nice and dry. So I'm going to leave that for a little bit full of water, and I'll dump it out. And won't be able to install it because I need to finish off the counter part of the task. But with the strainer in place, I know I can install it. I've got everything I need, and it works. It's sealed, watertight, and that's good. So I got another task successfully checked off my list. If you remember, the glow plug indicator on the instrument panel burned out, and I tried to replace it with a red LED only to discover that the LED had a higher turn-on threshold than the voltage that was on the instrument panel. So I went out and bought a different LED, wired it up, and I have success. Take a look. So this is the glow indicator, and you can see I put a little LED with a holder in there, and when you crank over glow plugs, lights up. I don't know how well that's going to show up on the camera, but I think it should. Another victory for me. My sink is not, well, my strainer is not leaking. I've got the glow indicator working, and I have epoxied the Boomkin. I was going to spend some time sanding on the bowsprit, but I think I will leave that for tomorrow. It's getting a little bit late in the day, so I'll come back at it tomorrow and nice and fresh, and I'll be able to devote my full attention to bowsprit.